I'm Charlie DeMar. We are just outside the courtroom where Jussie Smollett has taken the stand. That has been the biggest question in this trial, is whether or not Smollett would take the stand in his own defense. He's been on the stand for a little over an hour right now, and he began by establishing, really humanizing himself for the jury, because up until now, they haven't heard his voice other than the beginning of this trial where Smollett introduced himself to a pool of prospective jurors. So this really is the first time that the jury is hearing from Smollett in his own words. He began by talking about his family life, his siblings, his relationships with his siblings, and also his acting career. He said that he, acted in several movies as a kid, by no means was a star, but said he was a busy child actor. He mentioned the Mighty Ducks that he was in, and then his attorneys, defense attorneys, moved it along, establishing, how he met the Osundaro brothers. First, that he met Abel Osundaro. Although Abel did work on the set of Empire, they didn't meet on the set. They actually were introduced through a mutual friend. And we haven't gotten to the night of January 29th yet, but so far Smollett has established his relationship with Abel, that the two would go to clubs together, that they would do drugs together, and that they would go to bathhouses together. And Smollett detailed a sexual relationship with Abel Osundaro. And again, that's really where we are at right now. The defense team also establishing that the two would drive around and smoke weed together, that it was not unusual for them to do that, which is getting into the heart of the prosecutor's theory that Smollett was seen on surveillance camera picking up the Osundaro brothers and then doing a dry run of the attack. So the defense is punching back now, saying, you know what, it wasn't unusual for them just to drive around in the car together. This is what they did. Smollett's attorneys also asked him, are you proud, of your drug use? Why were you doing drugs? And Smollett explained that he was under a lot of pressure, on the show, that he felt pressure being a gay black man on the show Empire, and that he felt that he had to uphold that, and that there was a lot of stresses on him, and it was a way for him to sort of decompress. And again, he was asked if he was proud. He says, of course I'm not proud of it. I'm in front of a jury in my own trial explaining in front of my mother about my drug use. So that is where we are right now. The jury left off before a lunch break. They heard about Smollett needing to get in shape. Yeah, he said that Lee Daniels, the creator of the show Empire, told him that he needed to drop about 30 pounds before coming on set, and that Smollett needed to be shirtless for an upcoming music video, and that he needed to get in shape for that music video. Of course, that leads into the check for $3,500. The brothers, the Osundaro brothers, say they received a $3,500 check for not only a nutrition plan, a workout plan, but also to stage the attack against Smollett. Smollett's defense, of course, is that check was solely for nutrition and a health plan. On the memo line of that check, it does say nutrition and health. So that it appears that where we are left off, again, that was the big question in this case, whether or not Smollett was going to take the stand. He did. The defense is still up. Obviously, on cross-examination, we do expect some heated testimony there. But I do want to kick it over to Kimberley Egonmwan to get your take on where we're at and seeing Smollett testify.
Well, first of all, Charlie, thank you so much for all of your amazing coverage. And, it's always a risk when a defendant takes the stand in their own defense. In this case, in the American criminal justice system, a person, of course, is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And it is going to be up to the jury to decide, with all of these facts and figures in front of them, whether or not there is a reasonable doubt. But the defense seems to be doing a pretty good job of putting at least the doubt in their minds about what was the nature of the relationship between the brothers and also Jussie Smollett. As you reported last week, there doesn't seem to be much question about whether or not the brothers carried out the attack. We did get an opportunity to see the evidence of the photos of them in the store buying all of the bleach and the rope that they turned into a noose, etc. So we saw that. We also saw them either in a taxi or a ride share, actual footage, which you released from Chicago Police Department, which was showing them on their way to Jussie Smollett the night of the attack. You have the testimony of the security guard who states that he saw at least the face of one person that was white, which of course that would definitely throw some doubt about what is going on here. And also he saw at least two people, wasn't quite sure what they were doing, so he didn't help the person who was on the ground, the victim, which allegedly would be Jussie Smollett. But now we are entering this area of trying to figure out whether or not the brothers actually pulled this hoax on behalf of Jussie Smollett for $3,500, which is the check that is in question, or if that check really was for nutrition and for other assistance, and were these brothers just hangers on? So right now, Jussie Smollett has testified that one of the brothers he was familiar with, Bola, he had some type of sexual interaction with him in bathhouses here in the city of Chicago, which he alleges Bola knew about, he had never been to before, as they did drugs, they did ecstasy, cocaine, as well as cannabis, marijuana, weed. But what we're trying to figure out right now is, were they just hangers on and people who may have been envious or jealous? Because according to Jussie Smollett, he started out making a certain amount of money, $27,000 to $28,000 an episode. And by the end of his tenure with the show Empire, he was a major star, making around $100,000 an episode. So there is a lot at issue here. Were they hangers on? Was the one brother in a relationship with Jussie Smollett that just went sour? There is definitely doubt there, but is it reasonable? And Charlie, I think that's what the jury will be listening to try and think, is this reasonable? Is there a reasonable doubt that Jussie Smollett did not create this hoax?
And Kim, as we know, there has been a lot of evidence presented by the special prosecutor in this trial, but by the Chicago Police Department that was made public previously. How much of a risk is this by the defense to put Smollett on the stand like they are?
Well, you know, and that's a great question, Charlie. As I stated, it's always a risk to put a defendant on the stand, as we saw with a very different trial several years ago with Jason Van Dyke in the Laquan McDonald murder trial. Putting him on the stand definitely harmed him, right? But in this case, the level of doubt, you know, I don't know if Jussie Smollett had a choice not to take the stand, because the evidence and the testimony of the brothers was so damning. It's almost important enough for him to try and play off of the little bits of doubt that was left over from the testimony of the brothers. For example, are they drug dealers, or do they just give drugs out? So in one case, you can impeach these witnesses and their testimony in that. And if you find them to actually be just giving drugs out, not procuring drugs, then, you know, or find them to be drug dealers or something like that, if the jury can find that in their minds, then they'll see that as a lie and take a lot of everything else that they've also said to be a lie. Also, the testimony of the brother, in which they asked him point blank, were you in a sexual relationship with Jussie Smollett? And he said, we were not in a sexual relationship. Well, there are disputes as to whether having sexual acts, you know, in front of each other, if that's a sexual relationship or not. Maybe he is splitting hairs, but for him to say no, and yet Jussie Smollett is saying, yes, they in fact did have sexual acts in front of each other, that is also going to the credibility of them. Once you start to chip away at the credibility of any witness, at that point, you kind of have the option of throwing everything out the window about whether or not they're telling the truth. So it's going to be, I mean, I think it was almost important for Jussie Smollett at this point to get on the stand and definitely give this testimony.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for your time, for your insight. Again, we are on a brief lunch break. We do expect Smollett to pick up where he left off. And again, the jury has not heard about January 29th yet, the attack. We are sort of leading up to that, establishing his relationship with the brothers. And we do expect that testimony any moment now once we do resume in court. Again, we will have updates online and on air, but that is the latest from the Layton Criminal Courthouse. Charlie DeMar, CBS 2 News.